Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Huzur says that
मजलिसों
in the
की
world
बहुत सी किस्में हैं
there are various types of meetings,
या मुख्तलिफ मजालिस के
or
मुख्तलिफ
for different meetings the objectives are different, or the purposes.
बाज़ मजालिस मशवरे के लिए होती हैं
Some meetings are for consultation,
रियासत के असूल के लिए
in which for the achievement of the worldly objective consultation is made,
चाहे वो हुकूमत चलाने के लिए मशवरे हों
whether it is for running the government
या सियासतदानों के
or consultation of the politicians for their own subjects,
मजलिसें हों
or maybe the meetings of the businessmen, or regarding sports. The meetings are held for various purposes,
या
sometime for enjoyment,
जामियात
and then the so-called scholarly meetings are also held.
इनके लिए कमेटियाँ बनती हैं
They form the committees
तफरीह के प्रोग्रामों को बनाने के लिए
for formulating the entertainment programs. People sit together and ponder.
बरस के
In short,
ये सब किस्म की मजालिस
all these types of meetings
कमेटियाँ
and committees
मिलकर बैठना
and sitting together,
दुनियावी कामों के लिए होता है
this is for worldly things,
के लिए
and for God, or for the sake of the pleasure of Allah,
पाने के लिए
or to attain its His nearness. They are not held for this purpose, these meetings.
अगर लोगों की बेहतरी के लिए भी
If for the betterment of people
लगती है
a meeting takes place, or certain discussions take place,
दुनियावी अगराज के लिए
so that is also for worldly purposes.
खुदा ताला की खुशनुदी
For the sake of the pleasure of Allah Almighty, that is not intended therein.
लेकिन बाद ऐसी मजालिस भी होती हैं
But there are such meetings
दीनी अगराज के लिए हों
which are purely for the religious purposes,
जिक्र को बुलंद करने के लिए
which are to highlight and to raise the remembrance of Allah, and also to think of plans for bringing the people closer to God,
रूहानियत में तरक्की करने के
or for the improvement and progress in spiritual matters. Ways have to be thought, and those people who attend those meetings
रज़ा हासिल करने के लिए
in order to get the pleasure of Allah, they attend these meetings.
बरस के इन मजालिस का मकसद
In short, the purpose of these meetings
ये होता है
is only this much,
कि हमारा जो काम भी हो
that whatever we do,
हम जो भी मनसूबाबंदी करें
whatever planning we make,
मजलिस के जो भी प्रोग्राम हों
and whatever is the program of the meeting, the purpose of that
ताला की रज़ा हासिल
is to attain the pleasure of Allah.
उनमें लग़वियात से परहेज़ हो
The abstention from vain things. These are the meetings which Allah Almighty likes.
और ऐसी मजालिस के नताइज
And the result of these meetings, they appear in this world,
ऐसी मजालिस में शामिल होने वालों को
and the participants of these meetings,
मरने के बाद भी नवाजता है
Allah Almighty rewards the people even after their death.
एक मोमिन का काम है
So therefore it is the duty of a mu'min,
चाहे उसके घर की मजलिस
whether it is a meeting in his house with the family members, children, or maybe outside the home,
में ये कोशिश रहे
the effort should always be there that
ताला की रज़ा को
we have to, how do we have to attain the pleasure of Allah, and how do we have to look after the requirements of our spirituality and to increase it.
मोमिनों की हालत को
Our own condition and the condition of the believers, how we have to improve that. A mu'min, a believer, a worldly meeting of that is not, without the remembrance of Allah Almighty, performing the worldly duties. They abstain from vain things, and the heart, even if it is busy in worldly business, but the remembrance of Allah Almighty is the heart is always full with that.
दुनियावी कामों की मजालिस में भी
In the meetings of the worldly objectives, and deception, deceit and to usurp the rights of other people. People do in the meetings done by the Mu'mins, believers, this type of talk is not there, even if worldly meetings are there. As we see these days, the political and the worldly people, they have such meetings very often, rather. But the fear of Allah and righteousness, they always keep in mind. And this is what is expected from a believer, that these things, he must always keep them in mind. In the Holy Quran, Allah Almighty has given certain instructions regarding meetings. In those instructions, this is mentioned, that rebellion and disobedience and free from sin and the disobedience from the Prophet and following of taqwa, righteousness, this is the type of the meetings they should have. But it's very sad that even the meetings of the Muslims, they are just opposite to this one. And the Muslims towards other Muslims, they are planning to destroy other Muslims. Allah Almighty says that Ya ayyuhallazina amanu iza tanajaytum fala tatanajaw bil ismi wal udwan wa masiyat rasule wa tanajaw bil birri wat taqwa wattaqullaha allazi ilayhi tuhsharun. The meaning is that, O ye people who have believed, when you consult together in secret, then the sin and disobedience to the Prophet, never think about that. Yes, you do consult about piety and goodness and fear Allah. Towards Him you are going to be gathered in the end. But as I said, the Muslims, they have forgotten this command of Allah, and the division between them is at peak. And Allah Almighty has mentioned the quality of the believer, that ruhamau bainahum, that they are having mutual love and affection. But here what we see is, which is just similar to the state, the situation of the non-believers, regarding whom Allah Almighty has mentioned kulubuhum shatta, that their hearts are torn apart. The consultation of them mutually and also with other people, with others, maybe in the form of secret agreements. So then that is in disobedience to Allah and His Messenger and away from righteousness. And the fear of Allah is nowhere in their hearts. Allah Almighty says that you fear Allah, towards Him you are going to be gathered. There the governments and the kingdoms and the wealths and the Western powers and the support of all these worldly governments will not be of any avail. No big power. They will, the disobedience to Allah and the prophets, they will never be able to save the people from the punishment of that. The fact of the matter is that when they call themselves Muslims, then those people who make the world as the objective of them and those who run after that, the condition of those people, that is the practical proof of the fact that the belief and conviction about the existence of Allah Almighty is no more there. Otherwise, if they have a little bit of belief in the existence of Allah, then neither the Muslims, the leaders and the political people, their condition would be like that, and nor the condition of the so-called ulama would not be the condition as we see today, these days. Anyway, in this age and time, it is our responsibility that we must purify ourselves from all this type of thinking, and the fear of Allah and the righteousness should be increased in our hearts. At the same time, those people who have an access to these people, to the non-Ahmadi Muslims, and they have got some links with them, as far as it may be possible in their circles, in their own atmosphere, if they can give a word of advice to the Muslim, they should give the advice that this condition of yours is not only, it will bring you under the subjugation of the non-Muslims, rather you will become the recipient of the punishment from God, and the world you are running after, that will go out of your hands, and you have already abandoned religion, forsaken it. So now it is time to have the fear of Allah and righteousness to be created in your hearts. Otherwise, everything, you will lose everything. In the meetings of the worldly discussions, consultation, there is a meeting of UNO. Recently there was a meeting of the United Nations, and there was a speech by the President of America. On that, here, the Western writers here in this country, the analysts, they have written that from this speech of the President, instead of the peace, there is a danger that it may result in disorder and fighting. And some of them have written very openly that maybe through this speech, some Saudi Arab and some Muslims might have been happy. Otherwise, it was extremely disappointing. And it was such a speech which is going to kindle the fire of war. So the Muslim governments, they should look at the commandment of Allah Almighty, and they should try to abstain from all types of disorder and fighting and quarreling. So anyway, this is what is happening in the ordinary world. But at the same time, we have to analyze and scrutinize our own condition. We must always remember that Satan will not tolerate that the community is progressing. The Satan, according to its nature, in us as well, in order to create disorder and to create the division, he has to work something to achieve that. So therefore, those people who sometimes get together and they're in local areas or in the administration of the local country, or they discuss the matters regarding our community, these people actually, they are working at the behest of Satan, and they are misled by Satan. The job of Satan, that he attacks in a garb of kindness. So such people also come and join in this matter. Those who are not actually against the administration of the Jamaat, they feel, because of the feeling of the pain and anguish for the sentiments of the Jamaat. So, but they say that they think that in the form of kindness, the person who is telling something that might be right, and there is a need of some reformation. While the fact is that if the need of reformation is required, so then to the higher government officials and to the Khalifa of the time, the matter should be conveyed to them. And instead to hold the meetings here and there and talking together in such a way, as if some very secret things are being discussed there. And we are talking with great sentiments for the community. This is wrong. And this is sin and rebellion and disobedience to the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And that is an indication of being far away from righteousness. So from such meetings, Allah Almighty has admonished the believers that you shun these meetings, never attend them. if there is a complaint against any person or a complaint against the Amir, then you put the claim to Markaz and convey it to the Khalifa of the time. And then after that, the job of the duty of the members of the community is over. Now it is the duty of the Khalifa of the time to look the matter in whatever way better is better, and how to solve that problem. Yes, everyone should continue to pray all the time. With great devotion one should pray that Allah Almighty may remove all the weaknesses and shortcomings from the Jamaat, and those people who are following the path of righteousness, such workers may be granted to the community all the time. So this very important point must always be remembered by all. The more the Jamaat is getting progress and achievements, the Satan has to continue his work. And Satan, from the very first day, it mentioned to Allah the Almighty and sought the permission that he is going to do the work of misleading the believers and the people. The opponents of Ahmadiyyat, while they are planning for the community, and they will continue to do so, at the same time, in the name of kindness and favor to those people who are weak and not fully understanding the situation, they make those people as their instrument. So every Ahmadi in this matter must be very, very alert and careful. Allah Almighty may protect the community from all internal and external conspiracies and trials, and always enable them to become the part of those meetings which are righteous, and not that the rebellion and disobedience and those meetings which take the people away from righteousness, they should ever be attending those. There are various conditions of the meetings and various situations are there. Regarding that, some Holy Prophet ﷺ has mentioned certain things, and also the promised Messiah ﷺ, who was his dedicated follower, are there some statements, and I present that describing this one, that how should be the meeting of a mu'min, and if the meeting is not of that standard which is according to the high status of a believer, then what reaction should be shown by the people. Hadhrat Massih Maud, the promised Messiah, he says that we have the belief, and this should be the way of a believer, that when you speak, then it should be good, otherwise one should keep silence. Otherwise, when you see that if in a meeting Allah and the Prophet, the people are laughing at that, so either you leave that company meeting, otherwise you will be counted among them, or you reply very openly. There are two things, and there is no other third option. Either you reply or you keep quiet and leave that meeting. The third thing is hypocrisy, that you keep sitting in that meeting and you just nod in agreement, and silently, secretly, you mention your belief in a very secret way, very mild way, and you keep sitting and becoming the pliant. In that way, you just support and agree with the people, and then very softly saying that this is wrong and you should not say, but not mentioning it openly. He said that this is the thing, this is hypocrisy. This is not the way of a believer. So, this is the reaction of a believer regarding this type of meetings, where the religion is being laughed at, or the planning is done against religion, or in a very cunning way, such discussions take place which create some suspicion and doubt in the hearts of people. The reaction of a mu'min is that anything, if there is anybody who says against Allah and the Messenger or the administration of the Jamaat, if he says something, then you rebut that strongly and reply to that firmly. and say that if these things are right in your belief, so then you convey it to the Khalifa of the time. But to talk in this way in various meetings, that is not right. In such meetings, if a person keeps sitting there and in a very passive way, he does not rectify that, so then the promised Messiah ﷺ has said, this becomes hypocrisy. And a mu'min should always try to abstain from that. And in matters of religion and in the matter of administration of the community, one should not be without feeling a sense of honor of that. And either you openly reply to that one, or you stand up and leave that meeting. This is the way which Allah Almighty has mentioned. And the explanation of that, the Holy Prophet ﷺ has explained in this way. In one narration it is mentioned that a companion, he came to the company of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and he mentioned that, O Prophet of Allah, give me some advice. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, yes, have the fear of Allah. And when you go to any meeting and you find those people talking, if they are talking in good way and right thing they are talking, so then you stay there. And if they get busy in those things which you dislike, so then you leave that company. And he also explained the point that what sort of a meeting should be liked by the believer. And it is not that only something which is displeasing to him in a personal way, but if they are talking those which are against the administration or the Jamaat, if they are talking against that, that you leave that company. And regarding that, as I mentioned, that unpleasant talk, if they do, what sort of thing is that? Hadhrat Abdullah bin Abbas narrates that a person, he asked the Holy Prophet ﷺ that who are those people we should try to have the company of those people. The reply was that you sit in the company of those people, that when you look at them, you are remembered of Allah, and through their conversation your knowledge, religious knowledge, increases, and also their action should remind you about the life after death. So this is the guiding principle which a mu'min should always keep in mind while selecting the meeting, that you like those meetings where mention of Allah Almighty is being made and the greatness of the religion of Allah is being mentioned, and there you are also getting the increase in knowledge. And nowadays to increase the religious knowledge is very much required by all Muslims, Ahmadis, for tabligh, for da'wat ilallah, for tarbiyat. These things are very essential, and these are the things which also remind a person about the life after death. And one is always reminded of that only the glamour of the world is not everything, and the glamour and the world and the provisions are not all about, but actually the pleasure of Allah Almighty should be the objective of a believer. The very first hadith has been explained that if it is the meeting of those people, so if the people are talking against religion, then such meetings should be disliked by the believer. One should stand up and leave such meetings. And if we are mindful of that, then our elders and our youngsters, they can easily abstain from so many vices and trials. The youngsters, many of their meetings, sometimes the youngsters, they get into those meetings which are carried out in the name of fun, just for ha-hu. And because of the nature of this meeting, some of the youngsters, some of our youngsters are being influenced by them. They say that we should go and attend such meetings. A mu'min believer youngster should always remember that their lives, they have to be spared from these meetings. One should not go there. And there are always limitations. One has to remain within that.
जमात में भी ऐसे वाक़यात बाज़ हो जाते
Sometimes this type of incidents happen in the Jamaat, that because of bad company and bad meetings, some of our youngsters,
हैं नौजवानी में कदम रखते ही
as soon as they get to adulthood,
कर जाते हैं
they happen to commit certain things which are harmful to other people,
सायों को नुकसान पहुंचा दिया
harmful to their neighbors, or the people, the wayfarer, or whenever they go there just by way of enjoyment, they give harm to other people. And if it is found that this is a member of the community,
जमात की गुमनामी का पैसा
then it becomes a means of bringing defame to the community. So the parents,
अपने बच्चों की मजालिस
they have to keep an eye on the company of the meetings of their children and youngsters, so that our children, when they are coming adulthood, so they should be well protected from the bad meetings, companies. And in the homes, they should also hold these pak and pure meetings,
तरबियती नुक्ता नज़र से
which are always from the tarbiyat point of view are very nice and helpful.
सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने
And then the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on one occasion, he said that when some people they get together for the tilawat, for the recitation of the verses of Allah and for their affirmation, then Allah Almighty gives them the comfort, and the mercy of Allah comes and envelops them. And the angels also descend, they put their wings on that. And it is a great blessing of Allah Almighty that the community gets so many occasions in the world everywhere. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community, they hold their Jalsa Salana and the Ijtima, the gatherings. And in those meetings, there are some programs which are for tarbiyat, for intellectual improvement as well, and the remembrance of Allah for that. Today, for example, the Lajna Imaillah, their Ijtima, their gathering is started. Lajna should also remember that the most part of their programs should be religious and religious on religious topics and subjects. And the ladies should also remember that they have not come to join a fun fair. The purpose of their coming to Ijtima, they have to fulfill and to achieve that. And permanently the meetings of intellectual meetings on religious matters, even if the the program is not carried out, but in their sittings, instead of talking vain, and their talk should be very constructive. And those things, indecent talk, they should try to avoid, and they should not be wasting their time by indulging in this talk. The Holy Prophet ﷺ on one occasion has mentioned that those people who attend a certain meeting and by coming there
वहाँ जिक्र इलाही नहीं करते
and they don't remember the Allah Almighty there,
मजलिस को क़यामत के दिन
they would look at that meeting on the day of judgment with great remorse. So those who come to Ijtima, they should remember that the objective for coming to the Ijtima, the gathering, should be fulfilled. And instead of spending their time in laughing and talking, the most of their time should be spent in listening to the good talks and good conversations, so that in the hereafter we may not be looking back at these meetings with remorse. We have to follow the path of righteousness, and by spending the time in the company of the righteous people, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what advice he has given us in one narration, he said that apart from mu'min, you don't sit in the company of other people, and only righteous people should be coming for the feast or join with you in food. Normally people meet so many people. Sometimes you have to meet with non-Muslims. It is not possible that a person should never ever be sitting or talking to a non-Muslim. The meaning of this the statement of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, that your close friendship, dedicated friendship, and your sitting and meeting should mostly be with those people who are very strong in faith and those who are following the path of righteousness. so that you may also increase in righteousness. The promised Messiah ﷺ says that one way of reformation is this one, that kunu ma sadiqin, that those people who are in their words and actions and in their attitude, they are based on truthfulness. You try to be in their company, and their wording and their statement and their actions should be based on truth, and every condition of them should be, and that is indicative of the goodness and righteousness. That is to say, the pious people. And before that he said, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha, that O ye people who have believed, acquire the quality of righteousness. That means that first believe and then leave the places of wickedness and be in the company of righteous people. There is a great impact of the company which continues to work within a person. And if a person goes to the prostitutes and other areas, and then he says that I don't go there to commit any adultery, so that person should be told that you will do that, and one day he will be committing the same thing one day, because there is great effect in the company. Similarly, somebody who goes to a pub, whether he abstains and however he may say that I don't drink, but one day will come when he will start drinking. So always try to avoid the bad company in worldly ways in your business. Sometimes you have to be dealing with other people, as I said. But in these relationship, there must be certain limits, and this should not be the way that in their bad companies one starts going into the company of these people. So many bad things are done there, and so many people are required because of going those meetings. And the people here, they sometimes mention that some English ladies, they have mentioned there that our husbands, they were very pious, very good, but because of bad friends, certain vices have come into them, and they have started going to bad companies. So these people, those non-Muslims, they are realizing these things. So we have to be much more taking regard of this one. And in order to stop these things, the Holy Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that you should not have close contact and with the people, those who are not religious, because this will take you away from religion. Yes, for the purpose of tabligh or for conveying the good things, then of course you have to have your contact with these people. Without that you can't perform the tabligh. But for this purpose, but you have to invite these people to your meetings, because then these good pious meetings, they leave the good impression. And the people who come to our jalsas and functions, there are so many such people who always mention that by coming over here, and when our condition totally changes, and the impact and the result of the good company, the promised Messiah ﷺ mentions in one place that when a person goes into the company of a righteous person who is a pious man, then the truth actually works in him. And those people who leave the company of the righteous and go to the company of the wicked people, then the wickedness and vice, that vices these affect those people. That is why in Quran and Hadith there is a strong admonition that bad company should be shunned. We should shun those companies. And it is mentioned that where Allah and His Messenger, they are ridiculed, then you leave those things. But a person who showing the weakness does not abandon, then he would be counted among those people. And then he says that the person who lives in the company of the righteous people and truthful people, there is how much need is there for us that a person, after one should act upon this instruction, that be in the company of the righteous people. In Hadith it is mentioned that Allah Almighty sends to the angels, they come to the meeting of the company of the righteous people, and when they go back to Allah, Allah would ask them that what sort of meeting you saw. So they say that we attended a meeting, there was a person who were remembering Allah, but there was one person among them who was not among those people who remember, but he was just sitting there. But Allah Almighty will say that he will also be counted among them. Innahum qawmun la yashka jalisuhum. that no person will be bereft of this good result of this company. So that person is really very unfortunate who is away from the good company. So the company of the righteous people and those people who sit on those companies, they become the recipient of the goodness. And these are the meetings which are always filled with the remembrance of Allah Almighty. Then the promised Messiah ﷺ says that there are people who declare with their tongue about Allah Almighty. But when you investigate, then you will find that inside they are atheists. When they are in worldly business, so then they totally forget the wrath of Allah Almighty. So this is very important in that case, that through prayer, you try to seek the real understanding about Allah. Without the true belief, you cannot get this conviction. And that will be attained when you know that by severing your ties with Allah Almighty, there is a death. And while you pray in order to be protected against sin, then don't leave these measures which can be taken, and all meetings and get-togethers through which you are instigated for bad things. You abandon those meetings and also continue praying along with that. And remember it very well, that from all these trials which are linked with the people as a decree of Allah, if the help of Allah Almighty is not there, you cannot be delivered from those things. And the prayer which is offered 5 times a day, there is an indication that if your worldly thoughts, you will not clear your things from there, then you will not get the benefit. Just to offer the prayer, just by way of a ceremony, in a ceremonial way, sit-ups, if you do, that is not right. And one has to submit to Allah Almighty with all the devotion and honesty. And as far as possible, one should try to make devotion and commitment in prayer, and all these bad thoughts should be taken away. And this is the type of prayer which is accepted. And if one is steadfast in that, steadfastness is there, so then he will feel that the light of Allah will descend upon his heart. And this is otherwise there is a poisonous effect in this satanic instigations. So that is to say that Allah Almighty has got the remedy of all these instigations. So you submit to Allah and seek help from Allah Almighty, so that Allah protects you from the ill effects of these bad meetings. In one narration it is mentioned that the Holy Prophet ﷺ, his regular practice was that whenever he got up from a meeting, he used to pray that, "O my Allah, you are holy, and I swear in your name of holiness that there is no one worthy of worship. I seek your forgiveness, and I always come back to you." And on one occasion, he said that there are certain words that whosoever uttered it 3 times while standing up from a certain meeting, so then Allah Almighty will forgive all those sins which might have committed there. And those people who said this meeting in a good meeting, and the meeting of the remembrance of Allah Almighty, that will be put onto his heart. And that wording is Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. That, "O my Allah, you are pure with all your glory, and there is no one worthy of worship. I seek forgiveness from you, and I turn back to you. So those things which are unpleasant with me, protect me from the ill effects of that." And then these things, and that prayer protects the person against the ill effect of that. And that enables the person to get the maximum benefit from such companies. As the promised Messiah ﷺ has mentioned, that unless the help of Allah is there, you cannot be delivered. So therefore, all the time, continue seeking the help of Allah. Allah Almighty enable us to do so, that we always shun the bad companies, bad meetings, and if unfortunately we happen to go there, then we will be protected from the ill effect of that. Always be in search of pious meetings and be sitting there, and then the purity, and you become the recipient of the good effects of that. Allah Almighty protect us from attacks of Satan and forgive us and always enable us to be attached with the administration of the Jamaat and Khilafat and all those people who are trying to deceive. And there Allah Almighty protect us. He says after the prayer, I'm going to lead a Janaza prayer, and that is of Janaza, an African Ahmadi, Karam Bilal Abdul Salam Sahib. He used to live in Philadelphia. On 13th of September, he passed away. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. He came here at the time of Jalsa. And first day when the Pan-African program were there, he suffered a stroke at that time. And he was not feeling well. So he was taken to hospital. And he was under treatment for a few days. And he improved. And then he came to me. And he appeared to be in good health. And then he went back to America. In 1934, he was born in Florida. At the age of 6, the parents died. And at the age of 8, he got the education of Bible. And he joined various jobs. He was in army for some time. In 1957, he became Minister of Gospel. But he was having a difference, disagreement with the certain. Then he happened to meet someone who gave him the copy of the Holy Quran. Then he asked, who are these people who have printed this Holy Quran? He said that these Muslim people are not Muslim, but their books are very good. And then he found the address from this person. Then he reached his shop, the Ahmadi shop, and there he looked at the photograph of the promised Messiah. And when he asked, then he was told that he is the promised Messiah. He is the promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi. So after that, he accepted Ahmadiyyat after that. And in Philadelphia, he was busy in Tabligh along with Ahmadis. And Bilal Abdul Salam Sahib, he was very fond of learning the Holy Quran. Every day traveling 4 hours, he used to come to Pittsburgh, and every second Sunday, so that he could learn some Holy Quran. And he was president of Philadelphia, and he was the secretary of new converts as well. He dedicated his life. He was in Baltimore for some time. He was honorary missionary of the Jamaat there in Baltimore, and he continued this tabligh later. He was in great love with the Khilafat, regular, very obedient to the institutions of Jamaat. And at the mention of the Khulafa, his eyes used to become filled with tears. And he attended the Jalsa Salana in Qadian as well. In Philadelphia, the mosque is being constructed there. He was very looking forward to its completion. And during the construction of this mosque, he used to spend the whole day in Keban and pray for the completion of the mosque. And he was always trying that the mosque should be built very soon. Inshallah, that will be built in short time. His wife, Mrs. Histing, she is a pastor, and she was not Ahmadi, but he always treated her nicely. He left behind 2 sons and 2 daughters. One son, Umar Abdul Salam, in 1993 he joined and the others are not. And Abdullah Diba Sahib, he is a missionary there. He writes that he was a very active member of the Jamaat, very good mannered, very popular and loving and devout person. He used to help other people, and he was always leading the way in the work of the community and very close to youngsters. And also he was very dedicated to protect them and help them. And he actually changed the lives of many youngsters and always advised them to follow the right path. He says that a large number of the youngsters, they have become, as a result of his tarbiyat, they have become the part of the community, an active part of the community.
जब बीमार थे अस्पताल में
When he was in hospital,
ये हिदायत की थी कि आपके
he said, he instructed that the copy of the Holy Quran should be on the bedside.
और यहाँ जब बीमार थे तो
And when he was not feeling well here, he said that Allah Almighty has given me long life. There are certain jobs which I want to accomplish. As I mentioned, that his relationship with the Khilafat was of extreme devotion. Whenever he met, there was always a very pleasant smile on his face, and he was a very devout and dedicated. Allah Almighty may exalt his station and forgive him, and also Allah enable his rest of the progeny to accept Ahmadiyyat. Ameen.